Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful, empowered harmonizers. We're zooming in and focusing in a little bit more in depth on a great viewer question, and that is to understand sort of the hyper arousal or the impulsivity aspect of a psychopath, whether it's a female or male psychopath. Now, psychopaths will experience a wide range of emotions. However, they don't experience them in the same way that most of the people do. It's thought between 1 and 4% of the population are psychopathic, and especially in specific work positions, there are thought to be higher levels of psychopathy, particularly that as the C-level executive. It's thought that, up to 25% of people in higher ranking positions of organizations are psychopathic. And the psychopathy oftentimes, with these individuals, because the way that their brain is set up, the part of the brain that controls the fear response, the amygdala, the outer layer is much thinner in a psychopath than a regular individual. So they don't really experience fear. They're not held back. They don't get afraid. There's this sort of quiet fearlessness, and they really don't buckle under stress because they're not fearful. They're not anxious. So this is thought to be a very good quality in a lot of high-level executives where there's a lot of pressure or a lot of important decisions to be made. They're just not feeling it. They're not fearful. So realize that that there are physical differences in the brain and the circuitry of a psychopathic brain, which makes it, a different outlook and a different experience for them. And you can understand this when they're, if you're around someone who has psychopathy, there's, something that normally would be upsetting to somebody, they're unaffected. They have very shallow or no affect. And it stands out. Most people would be troubled. They'd be worried. The loss of a pet, being late for their child, being faced with certain important decisions. They just don't seem to break a sweat. They're not concerned. And, even while watching movies, things that might be gruesome, they just don't have a reaction. They're more fascinated. And likewise, there's been pain receptors that, for example, if you're to see somebody slapping your hand and then really hard, you can start to feel how that might hurt. Psychopaths don't really they can turn it on and off. So if they're witnessing somebody, there's been studies that have been done, assessing this aspect. And, when you see somebody's hand getting slapped like this, people who witness it would begin to feel that. That's the empathy, that's the mirror neurons, that's the amygdala, rising up. And this sort of cycle of emotion is not really going on. The psychopath doesn't feel that when they're witnessing it in the same way. So they're not really, they might also not have a very reduced, what they would say, I guess, is the startle reflex. Most things when people would be startled, they're just not startled. They're not fearful. They're not worried. They're not concerned. So once again, this can come as a fact of they can be very flat and monotone in their voice. It's very strange. They're almost emotionless in their voice. And so you can hear the tone differential, especially in, maybe someone who's not aware or not hiding their psychopathy, and there's also, people who then over-exaggerate the fear response, the startle response, because they want to appear normal, as if they are affected. When they see, it's just so over-exaggerated. And a lot of people, when they see somebody in the startle or in the fear response, they're going to pick up the same feeling. They're going to join them. They're going to almost have fear by osmosis. Those mirror neurons, the empathy that are part of, how you're wired will also begin to get set off. In other words, you'll feel fear with them. You'll be startled with them. And, but if it's that exaggerated, you have to become aware that you don't get caught up in their falsity of emotions, or their look like, emotions of play or impulsiveness are really to offset their feeling of that there's nothing going on, or boredom. They have a high need for stimulation. Once again, they're sensitive to the dopamine receptors. The reward centers are thought to be 5 times more sensitive than the receptors in the rest of the population. So when they want something, they just want something. They're going to go after what they want. And whether it's money, position, whatever it is, they're going to go after it. And so, this combines with a need for high stimulation, high energy. And so you can, their brain overproduces and overvalues dopamine, meaning like it creates an abundance, and it's just like, yes, we want to keep this, neurotransmitter going. It activates the reward centers in the brain. So it's very easy for people to get caught up in the psychopathic circuitry. And so they're, if they get, oftentimes you have to understand then what, is a reward for them. Manipulating and controlling others. Sometimes, causing other people worry, concern, paranoia, insecurity, financial loss, job loss, relationship loss. Causing these issues in others can be activating that dopamine reward center in the psychopath. They overproduce, and their brain overvalues this. So that is what is kind of like their eye on the prize. That's their dopamine. And it's very easy then for regular, ordinary people to either become a victim or to kind of get swept up into their mentality, if you will. Trying to, get the, stay in with that empathy, and then feel that, they're always on their mind. They're overstimulating of others, so that they're always front and center of this person, even when they're not there. And it's not in the positive. It might have a tinge of positivity, but usually it's going to be mixed with a degree of paranoia, insecurity, concern, and confusion. That sort of puzzle, enigma feeling. You're not quite sure what they're going to do next. You're not quite sure how the communication is going to go next. Is there going to be something enigmatic, meaning very puzzling, mysterious, that they're going to say or do that is unique to the psychopath because of these abnormalities and these aberrant differences? They are wired differently. So, the Chevy ain't a Chevy. The Ferrari ain't a Ferrari. It might look like a Chevy or a Ferrari, but underneath you got wiring for something else. It's not going to have the same drive. It's not going to have the same rhythm. It's not going to be able to operate under the same gas pedal and brakes. In fact, someone who is psychopathic, they don't have any sort of brakes on that emotion. They don't have a lot of inhibitions because of these physiological differences. They do not, with my train of thought, let me just think what I was going to say. So they're, let me just think back when so their desire to get their own way is very strong, but yet it can be sort of covered up. In other words, the cool, calm, collected, and then with what they want, with what they're going after something. In other words, they crave this overstimulation and sort of risk-taking behaviors to trigger that dopamine going. Even if it's something like, why would they want that? They can either be strongly desiring and have a very poker face, I would say, but with a psychopath, they're so uninterrupted in the face of fear. It's almost it's just something that oftentimes people become fascinated by, and then oftentimes might feel secure with because they seem so unaffected. But yet they need this then hyper arousal, which oftentimes has aberrant or abnormal outcomes, especially for the well-being of others. This can be something that arouses them. Their dopamine is kind of like people who play the video games and then they get something, what they want. I don't play video games, but it's just like as if you get this and then that person and then that prize or whatever it is that they're doing, it's a dopamine circuitry and then they're going after it. That's sort of an equation, I would say, or kind of a similarity to how a psychopath will get overstimulated. They're playing really fast. They want something and they kind of have just this sort of lifeless look on their face, but they're hype, and they can have a ton of energy and they can do things that most people would feel terrified to do or feel is too risky. Not getting enough sleep, going places that are dangerous, etc. Violating social norms. People usually don't do that, and then the psychopath will do this. So this hyperarousal can then be sort of transmitted onto others, meaning you get swept up in the energy. Of course, when you're having conversation with others, you want to be on the same wavelength. You want to be on the same vibe. You want to be, in that rhythm. I mean, that's entrainment. When people's hearts begin to beat in sync, if they're together, they breathe the same. Women's menstrual cycles, whatever. And it's called entrainment. You can look it up. So if you're with a psychopath for some degree of time, your system is gonna try to run on their juice, their fuel. It's just a natural physiological response. But yet then something is triggered in you of your own internal alarm system, like this isn't right, but this is too much, but I'm going to push myself and maybe this means growth. So people tend to rationalize, this feeling of hyperarousal that the psychopath will elicit, or that feeling in their gut. There is something wrong about this person. I don't know what it is, but I get this tense feeling in my stomach. Pay attention to that feeling. You're not making it up. It's, butterflies, whatever, but usually you get a sort of, kind of creepy crawly feeling maybe on your skin. You get a little bit like you're going to turn away from them. There's something like odd. Yet people tend to oftentimes have a transfixed stare, staring back at the psychopath, their psychopathic gaze, which can tend to be very vacuous, mean drawing you in. There's that emptiness that just seems to pull out your energy in a very vampiric manner. But yet people think, oh, well, this is what a close relationship. So they then interpret it, this is what it means to be really close, to share secrets, to, whisper. But the psychopath then will do that until they whisper you right off the cliff, right out of your, right out of your home, right out of your family, right out of your bank account. These little things that they do subliminally, they will do without a doubt. And oftentimes studies have been shown also that they tend to sort of give, new names or nicknames to people where they don't really call you by your name or who you are. They'll make up sort of their own language for you. And then just sort of, they're putting you in a compartmentalized, like, you're just my sweet pea or whatever it is, the little name that they're giving you. And you're no longer who you are. You're then this person that they've given the name to, which is subject to manipulation. And not just like, oh, I want you to clean the kitchen. We're talking deep-seated psychological manipulation, physical manipulation, beyond which people know how to control themselves. In other words, it's like putting in software that the hardware does not know how to run. People become sort of foreign to themselves. They think that they're growing, they're getting closer, it's a new chapter in their life, whatever it is, that this hyperarousal in the beginning might have seemed thrilling, exciting, what they were missing in their life. I'm now doing all this, but yet that they find that there's something quite not right as the relationship progresses. They're not there for specific important things. They don't call, they don't text. They seem to be sort of giving, when, that sort of glazed over look, controlling you with a stare. It gets you to the chill, it might give you a deep fear. Like, only around this person have you felt this. And it's because deep inside your body subconsciously knows more than your conscious mind has words for. In other words, your subconscious, your physiology built in, I mean, you don't have to go and get this, it's built in. Your subconscious knows when something is not right. It's just you can pick it up, but you might not have conscious awareness or bubbling conscious awareness, but maybe not the language to say, whoa, I got to be careful of this person. It doesn't become verbalized. It just becomes this sneaky feeling, tingling in your abdomen, your solar plexus. Be careful, beware, and then, because sort of your body knows what they're capable of, the looks, the looks that are like ice. And ice is just a spiritual term, I guess. So be very careful when, you understand that psychopaths are extremely reward driven. And so they will apply themselves 150% to what they want. They seem to be real go-getters. They are very reward driven, i.e. that dopamine is overproducing and oversensitive in their brain. So that's why you see these people do things in families that you wouldn't expect, do things in companies. And really they don't see the downside, even if it means exploiting or hurting others or not being there. They're just unaware of, or insensitive to the needs of others. So then when people are into that hyper aroused state, they're then very confused when the devaluation and then the discard comes, meaning this person is just sort of done. And you're like, this doesn't make progressive sense. How people just don't drop off that quickly. So, it can be very, very confusing. So, and then it can also be very confusing. And I've been reading a lot of studies that talk about how psychopaths can sort of switch on an empathy switch when they want to and turn it off when they don't want it. So for most people, it's just sort of, it's just part of their human nature. With someone who has psychopathy, it's not part of their human nature. It's something that they learn to do when it can be conducive to them getting what they want. So in other words, it's just not really there for them, but they can adapt it and appear as if. I mean, it's just, it might seem like one of their greatest virtues, but it's a performance, meaning it is what they want other people to think. And to the degree that most people cannot fathom, even passing lie detector tests, most people don't have that sort of control over their physiology. So these individuals can really, sneak through the cracks, large and small. So, realize that the hyperarousal is part of their physiology, the amygdala, the dopamine, the high testosterone as well, and how they, feel about emotions and going after what they want, and how other people are really sort of not feeling, they're just sort of, they don't feel others. People are just the same as a refrigerator, a table, they're just similar. They don't have that sort of humanity that you would understand when you look at somebody and you say, good morning. You're connecting with them as a human. Psychopaths, I believe it's a whole different mindset that oftentimes requires hyper arousal and hyper stimulation, sort of bigger than life, methods to get people sort of into that big-eyed, sort of transfixed deer in a headlight situation that the psychopath is known for cultivating. This is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today, and I hope that these videos do help. Please share, please subscribe, and please donate for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support. Peace out. Have a beautiful day.